Welcome to Hatch's Digital Transformation Podcast series, where today and in episodes to come, we'll talk through how strategic integration of digital technologies across all aspects of an organization is revolutionizing operations, client interactions, and business models. We'll investigate and share how the evolving digital landscape in our industries is fostering efficiencies, innovation, and adaptability by leveraging data, analytics, cloud computing, and emerging technologies. Our goal with this podcast series is to grow together and ensure a sustainable future through digital transformation. I'm your host, Kelly Pike. I'm a digitalization specialist at Hatch and hold a mechanical engineering degree with over 15 years of experience. In this podcast, we plan to explore how the priorities and importance of data evolve throughout the life cycle of an asset, from the engineering phase through to the operations and maintenance phase. Initially, the data generated during the engineering phases serve as the foundation for design and construction. However, as the assets transition into operations, the relevance of this data shifts. We'll discover how the focus moves from technical specifications and design data to operations insight and performance metrics that support maintenance, troubleshooting, and optimization. I'd like to introduce Helen Adamson. Helen is a seasoned process engineer with over 25 years of experience in operations and design within the processing plant sector. She possesses a deep understanding of the critical value drivers that underpin successful projects and the strategic importance of achieving them. As managing director, Helen currently leads our global practice for commissioning, operational readiness, and ramp up, driving excellence and ensuring seamless transition from project execution to operational success. Thanks for joining me, Helen.
Thanks for having me today, Kelly.
Okay, so in this next era where data is the new gold, why is asset data important for our clients to have?
Well, I think today everything is data-driven. Although I'd say it's always been data-driven, it's just that data is available in different ways, paper-based and so on. And today, through digitization and the systemization that we've seen happen, this data is more readily accessible and therefore more readily usable in our operations. And I think the difference is that while a project focuses on engineering construction of an asset, the operations team is about the ongoing sustained operation of those same assets. And because of this, the difference in data drivers is that it's important to change our focus when we're going from that point of looking at a project into looking at operations and understanding that things that were important in project is not the same in operations. And through that understanding, we are able to navigate and then potentially enhance the data conversion and the usefulness of that data to operations. They need it for many, many different reasons, and it allows them to enhance the performance of the asset. And at the end of the day, the whole reason that operators look to put assets into place is so that they get an operational performance and an outcome to their business. So enhancing that operational performance is critical, and data is a primary input to that operational improvement.
So you mentioned, that there's engineering data, but then there's a whole bunch of other data sets that basically serve to help transition that asset from engineering to operations and maintenance. What are some of the other data sets that are important to the operations?
Well, the operations, are not just wanting to know what the asset is itself. The operations need to understand risk data related to the operation, process data related to the operation and the expected performance, spares data, health and safety. Process safety information is a massive area. And they need to understand all of this data in order to not just look at how they manage assets, but how they manage an operation. And so this is where they focus when they look at operational readiness. Is how do they take this data that might be available that they need, that actually is in all different parts of the business and the project, and some of it the project should be asking for because operations need it, not because the project needs it. And how do they then bring it into the landscape of their operation in order to get the best outcome for their business? They might need this data for maintenance management, for planning, for change management, for warehousing, capital investment planning, process performance improvement. There's many areas in which they need this data, and this data is not just around the asset purely. It's actually all the engineering aspects of the asset. It's about the operational aspects of the business.
So we've really got to trace that thread from, starting with the end in mind in terms of what decisions they're going to need to actually derive the performance metrics from that particular asset, and then take it all the way through to the beginning of the engineering phase to say, okay, how do we actually plan and develop this data that's going to be needed in the future? So, how do we actually go about then generating the data that's required?
Well, I think back to your point, you've really just hit on the crux of it, is that we need to understand that end. We need to then be asking the project for the things that are needed by operations. And this is a real shift for the project. Projects typically or historically have gone on doing what it is that they need to do in terms of delivering a physical asset. But and there's a lot of information that is nested in that process, but it's not necessarily created in the manner in which in the way in which operations might require it. And so, in order to change this, we have to be bringing operational thinking into the project much earlier. We need to understand how that data translates into operation. And then we need to ensure that there are processes that are put in place in the project to properly collect that data. It could be as simple as things like a project receives a technical spec or a data sheet that applies to multiple pieces of equipment, but the project doesn't assign metadata to that one document that associates it with all those pieces of equipment. But when you're in operation, they might want to look up that singular pieces of equipment, and they need to be able to go to data that was generated related to that equipment's design or its calibration settings or any number of things, and they need to be able to look it up on a singular piece. But if the project hasn't captured metadata to enable that, their capability to do so is undermined. So we've really got to step back. We've got to understand what operations needs, and then we've got to push through into our projects the requirements that operations have as much as what the project has, and make sure that they're tailored for in the way in which we capture data, the data we request, and the information we're looking to collate, so that it can easily be used in operation without there being a massive workload to to generate the value that would have been more easily done side by side if taken from an operational lens into the project.
Okay, so I guess that really hits the nail on the head in terms of, why operational readiness is really critical to start early in the project development phase. Okay, so now that we've gone through the operational readiness process and we've generated the data required, how does this data and information support decision making?
Interesting and good question. Well, look, we've got all sorts of data models that when we implement this in place and when we implement it properly, we can bring it through into the operational systems, and this then allows people to decision make around um, process performance, around troubleshooting, around tuning and adjustment, around safety management. There's many ways in which it helps decision guidance, and I think the key important thing here is that an operation is not about just data, and it's not about just assets. It's actually about people. People make decisions, and people and systems make decisions with people guidance as well. Obviously, machine learning and AI is a substantial benefit to improving some of that decision guidance. But at the end of the day, we need to empower people with data-rich environments that enable them to make better decisions. And so by giving them this data that enables them to consider more factors, to take more things into consideration, the outcome can only be that better decisions are made as long as we are bringing people along on the journey of it as well. Because, it's not just about data, it's not just about systemization, it's about people. And the journey of these three things has to happen concurrently.
There you have it, folks. At the end of the day, it's all about people making good decisions. If we can enable those people with operational readiness brought early in the engineering phase, we're able to develop an absolutely data-rich ecosystem that can then be handed over to the operations in a very, very structured and strategic manner, where that information can then be leveraged with ML and AI to support those key decision makers at the end of the process. Now, my favorite part of the episode, the rapid fire segment. I'll ask you 3 questions and challenge you to answer these questions in 10 words or less. Helen, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Name one common misconception about digital transformation.
I think that it is only happening now. In operations, it's happened always. It's just that now the technological development is faster and bigger, and so there are step changes to be made, and hence it's a transformation. But what we need to do is ensure that we don't just bring along the system, but we bring along the people. The organisation has to come with it, and they have to be upskilled equally.
I love that. So we've been doing it all along, but the technology is moving so quickly that now it's really a big step change.
Yes.
So what is the most important lesson that you've learned in your current role?
Really, it would be that it's critical to understand needs. If you don't understand needs, how can you attend to them? And so in digital speak, this would be that the organisation use or the operations use cases must be understood so that we can ensure that what is needed is built into the project and can be serviced effectively. And this includes also understanding how we transition this data from a project into operations. It's integration with operational systems.
I love that. So really starting with the end in mind and ensuring that we have a strategy to achieve that end. That's great. So from your personal perspective, what industry topic or activity is ripe for the greatest impact by embarking on a digital transformation journey?
I think if we're talking about bridging a project into operations, it's effective management of change. If we're talking about the power of digital in general, it's field surveillance and machine learning related to fault failure detection and decision guidance. We need to ensure that we bring these things together if we are to maintain data integrity, which is critical to a data-rich environment, which is critical to decision guidance.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining us in this conversation, Helen. Your insights into the operational readiness aspects were absolutely invaluable.
You're welcome, Kelly.
There you have it, folks. To achieve operational excellence, stakeholders need comprehensive data on risk, maintenance, performance, safety, and more to effectively manage both assets and overall operations, ensuring optimal business outcomes. To ensure seamless operations, projects must integrate these operational data requirements early on, capturing and organizing data in a way that meets both the project and operational needs. Implementing data models and operational systems enhances decision-making in all areas where the data is effectively structured and utilized with the ultimate goal of empowering people with data to make better decisions. I'm your host, Kelly Pike. Please join us in the next episode of this podcast series as we continue to investigate and share in the evolution of digital transformation. Until next time, let's keep innovating for a positive future.